Welcome to the Qualitox podcast. I'm Yan Kugel, your host, and my guest today is Marc García Gómez. Marc is a pharmaceutical contamination control strategy consultant and expert, and we're going to talk to him today about the impact of Annex 1 on this area in the pharmaceutical industry. We're going to talk about how it influences the validation statuses of facilities and what companies have to be concerned about and what should they undertake before the annex is live. So let's get to our talk with Marc. Hi, welcome to the Qualitox podcast.
Hello, Jan.
Thank you very much for joining me today after a long day at work where you deal with contamination control strategies. So it sounds really cool. So what basically do you do?
Well, I have almost 12 years of experience helping the companies to perform a good cleaning and disinfection programs. Okay, so my intention here is to help the people how to approach this very difficult thing, because the new Annex 1 is increasing, let's say, the difficulty of doing that. And I think that I could help them in facing this new issue. It's not new, but sometimes a lot of people don't care, let's say, about this, but now this will be essential for the CCS, for the contamination control strategy.
So how does the new Annex 1, at least the draft, would change the way people do contamination control? Or let's say back up a bit, what new challenges does it introduce?
For me, as a microbiologist, I'm proud to say that now the new draft of the Annex 1 is saying that the microbiological properties of your aseptic processes or non-aseptic processes will be essential. So now the microbiologist is not a rare guy or woman that is at the end of the corridor and just doing some media plate or something like that, but now a lot of people need to have microbiological knowledge. Not maybe as a microbiologist, but you have to know, if you are an operator, for example, what are the key problems you could face if you're not doing a good aseptic technique, for example. It introduces a lot of new concepts or new ideas that in the past were not implemented.
Can you summarize some of the main ideas?
In the past, when I visited some companies, let's say 50% of them, 20% of them do not have an exporter agent inside the cleaning and disinfection programs. And now with the new draft, it's clearly stated that you have to have an exporter agent in your cleaning and disinfection program. This is one idea. The other idea is that you need to have cleaning residues program very, very well validated, because as you know, the disinfectants, not the alcohol, but the other disinfectants and biocidal agents leave residues. So now you have to clean it, because if not, you are creating corrosion on your metallic surfaces. So now you have to think about that and to avoid the corrosion, because if not, you are increasing the likelihood to have OOS on deviations, etc. Companies need to understand why the biocidal agents could help your process, but also damage your process.
Do you feel that the Annex 1, its revision, is very positive for the industry? So can you maybe summarize, maybe from your perspective, the positive and the negative sides of it?
Yeah, maybe in the past, it's on your own to have this cleaning residues program to have it or not, and it's on your own. But now it's clearly stated, it's written, and you know that GMP, it's like give me paper, GMP. So everything now must be written and must be followed, must be understood and also must be created, because a lot of companies do not have these programs, these cleaning residues programs. So now they have an opportunity to understand why they could have a lot of excursions in terms of spores, for example. And this is not only an issue of to use again this biocidal agent on the surface, or the biocidal agent, and then you have the new media plate and says, okay, this is perfect now. Yes, but you need to understand why you have these problems day by day and every day. So it's very important. It's crucial now, this new text in the draft, and also gives more opportunities for the microbiologists to go to the engineers and also to the quality department and explain what kind of problems they could have in the future, or they are having now, and they don't understand why they are having repeated spores contamination, for example.
Do you see the additional requirements in cooperation between departments? So you mentioned that you have the microbiologists and the QA. So I understand that the companies would need to employ more microbiologists and make sure that there is a really good cooperation between the manufacturing, the SME, is the microbiologist in this case, and the quality assurance department.
Yeah, I think now the maintenance will be a new expert in microbiology, because they are facing a lot of corrosion. I hope not, but let's assume that you could have some corrosion in your surfaces. So the maintenance now is involved in this new issue, let's say. Also the height management, because they need to know what's happening in the aseptic area. And also the operator itself, because they are not only using a biocide without knowing anything. They need to know now what they are using, why they are using, and how many times per week or per month or whatever they need to use the biocidal agent X, and what is the purpose of that, for example, and why to clean these residues, why to use a detergent once every, I don't know, every week, every 2 weeks, every month. What kind of water do you use to dilute or to wipe out this detergent? Or, for example, there are a lot of different biocidal agents in the market, and how to choose them. For example, I need to use, for example, alcohol here, hydrogen peroxide there, quaternary ammonium there, a mixture of peracetic acid and hydrogen peroxide there, or maybe some chlors. It depends. Every biocide has its own properties, and not only the microbiologist needs to know these properties, also the operator, because the safety of this operator could be compromised depending on the chemical basis, etc.
So it looks that things will get more complicated. So
Yeah.
what does it mean for the validated status of current facilities?
That's a good question, because maybe 20% of the companies, 25% are not having the biocidal agent validated. And this is very good target for the auditors to warn you with a warning letter. For example, if you buy a concentrated biocidal agent, you need to validate the dilution, etc. And you have to demonstrate that, let's say, campaign per campaign or day by day. So you have to validate everything now, and also to demonstrate that you have a rationale behind not only the disinfectants, but what's behind the disinfectant, for example, the residues.
Do you think that the regulators will give enough time for companies to prepare once it is live? So I think that many companies are already starting to realize what's happening, because the draft is live and they're doing the preparation, as you said, probably not much is going to change. So from your experience right now from knowing the companies, do you see that companies are already hustling? Are they preparing?
Yeah, I think so that some of them, but there are people that are going in advance, that is good, and some other people are reactive. So I think then the big problem will be for the companies that are reacting to this. They have to validate everything to have everything in written, and they are preparing and they are now validating the efficacies of the biocides, and it's good because sometimes you can discover, let's say, that some companies only use, let's say, a specific product, but they don't know why. It's just because it's been used for the last 15 years, for example, but they don't have any kind of validation study, and they are now preparing, because I think now the auditors also are having more microbiological, let's say, concepts or ideas, or maybe studies, something like this, and they are now putting the finger in the bone now, and they are not only engineers, they are microbiologists also. So I think that maybe sooner than later you have to validate everything, not only for the drug, it's just for your process, and also for the patients you have to validate everything. So imagine that the Annex 1 is not saying anything about that, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to do it.
Right. So the common sense is that they should have done it before, but we know that there are many facilities that are producing the drugs for many years, the same production processes running for tens of years, and usually when you approach such people for changes or advances, they say, okay, that's how we've been doing it for 20 years, and the process has validated itself by itself, right?
Yeah, and also I am facing more these kind of things for in a non-sterile facilities, because the aseptic areas are very strict, and you can find some company that is not validating the biocidal agent or maybe the residues, but the non-sterile areas are more critical, because they are sometimes it's difficult to find a non-sterile area with everything validated, because they can afford more contamination inside. So but it doesn't mean that you don't have to do it, because if you review the new Annex 1 draft, it's perfectly stated that this is not only for aseptic areas.
Right.
So I think that the next step for the auditors, I don't know, could be not to have the same vision for the aseptic areas and for the non-aseptic areas, but let's say that the normal trend is to treat them as not the same, but maybe the non-sterile areas at the 75% than the aseptic areas.
So we know that there is a reason for this Annex 1 revision, right? So we even talked about it before. So there are countless of warning letters by the FDA and many issues in Europe. So it's not for nothing, right? So the regulators learned from hard evidence that something is lacking, and probably in many companies. So that's why a better contamination control strategy is required.
Yeah, I think that you say the perfect words. It's the CCS, the contamination control strategy, and the cleaning and disinfection, for instance, is just one part of this big holistic issue. You have to think about it now. So, but I think that cleaning and disinfection will be one of the top 3, top 4, top 5 issues for the next year, for the next years.
What would be your key points from this annex, and what would be your suggestions to companies for an effective strategy implementation? If we look at the helicopter view, because of course you need to look at each company and see, but where would you start looking?
The first question is to have let's say, weekly meeting or every 3 days meeting or something like that with all the departments involved, just to share experience, to share the knowledge, and to explain what's happening inside the aseptic processes or the non-aseptic processes. Because if not, it's impossible for the company to develop a good contamination control strategy. For example, if QA overseeing, let's say, one part of the process, or maybe they do not have a good knowledge in terms of maintenance or what kind of operation is doing the maintenance department or something like that, I think that this is issue that a lot of pharmaceutical companies must face, because if not, as I said before, it's impossible for you to develop a contamination control strategy. Then to give so more importance to the microbiology, because I know that it's important, but now will be critical. Okay, also to understand all the steps inside your process, just to control everything. For example, one special thing that you can have or you can discover here in the new Annex 1 is that you need to have a specific list of items that you can introduce in your area. I think that now the ICHQ9 and the ICHQ10 will be essential for this new era, let's say new era of pharmaceutical industry, and also to have smart people doing risk analysis and to know everything, as I said before, all the process. Because if not, it's impossible for you to develop a good strategy and also a good risk analysis, risk assessment, and a good outcome, and that will lead to a good CAPA. So everything is connected, okay, but I think now the microbiology will be more important than before, and also to be together once per week or something like that, and to understand the whole process.
Okay, great. Perfect, Marc. Thank you very much for giving an overview for this important topic of Annex 1 and its connection to contamination control strategies. And I think people should have several takeaways from this discussion and have something to think about, especially as you mentioned, weekly meetings, daily meetings, to understand and plan ahead, because it is crucial.
And also in terms of biocidal agents, to understand what you are purchasing. This is critical, because sometimes you are seeing some technical data sheets and some safety data sheets that it's difficult to believe that they are being used inside pharma industry with people at the same time inside the area. So it's not a joke, but I mean, it's very important to qualify the vendor also. It's clearly stated in this new Annex 1. You have to qualify your vendor and also qualify your product, your commodity, or your wipe, for example, your globe. You have to qualify everything.
Marc, thank you very much again for coming to the show, sharing from your expertise, and I wish you best of luck.
Thank you, Yan. You too, and see you soon.